Marriage in the early chapters of Genesis and the theory of evolution. Can the theory of evolution be harmonized with the account of the creation of Eve from the side of Adam in Genesis chapter 2? Before going on to respond to this question, a few brief introductory remarks might first be offered. The Church has not ruled on whether or not we as Christians can believe in the theory of evolution. That is, whether we can believe in the proposition that God, through a long drawn-out evolutionary process, brought human beings into the world, the culmination of a carefully pre-planned series of earlier life forms. We are, at least up to the present time, free to accept or reject this theory. According to a theistic understanding of the theory, that is, theistic evolution, God, at a pivotal time in the process, infused a soul with intellect and will into the body of what was once a form of life in the pre-human realm, often termed by those who proposed this theory Neanderthal man, so as to raise the status of this earlier life form to that of becoming a human being. There are, however, it is suggested, two immediate problems with this understanding if we are to remain faithful to the account of creation as described in the Bible. The first problem is simply that only one of the Neanderthals could become a human being, as all of humanity is descended from Adam, the first human being whom God created in the Garden of Eden. The other Neanderthals must remain behind as a particular class of living beings without a human soul. We will not dwell on the subject of Neanderthals in this video, other than to say that geneticists today, when studying the DNA of Neanderthals, and only recently discovering that Neanderthals interbred with human beings, now in fact classify Neanderthals as human beings. In other words, they were not what was termed in the previous slide an earlier life form or pre-human species, but really human beings all along. For a more detailed examination on the subject of DNA and Neanderthals, see the YouTube video entitled Creation or Evolution 2017 Genetics and DNA. The second problem, it is proposed, is even more emphatic, as it touches on that distinguishing feature which marks out human beings from all other forms of life in God's creation. For God has created and called each human being in a special nuptial bond for another, whereby the groom and bride are truly one body, and so can address and see each other as my other self. It is this nuptial blessing described in the book of Genesis, of the two being formed as one body, a blessing not seen in the animal world, which is the main subject matter of this short video. This, it is proposed, is the second and main problem for those who believe in theistic evolution. Let us now examine this distinguishing nuptial blessing given humanity, the second proposed problem for those who uphold the theory of evolution, under the heading Adam and Eve and the theory of evolution. If Eve was literally formed from the side of Adam as described in the book of Genesis and as believed by St John Chrysostom, St Augustine and all the early church fathers, how could such a real biological event be fitted with the theory of evolution when no such physiological phenomenon was ever proposed to have happened in the earlier species of life forms from whom it is suggested human beings are descended? This nuptial blessing of being created as one body, that is Adam and Eve being formed from the same body, was and is, it is proposed, God's supreme gift to humanity, and what we learn from the book of Genesis distinguishes man from the rest of God's creation. It is also why we are told that man was created in the image and likeness of God. See Genesis chapter 1. Although all of God's creation was created as good, including the animals that God created, this nuptial blessing was reserved for humanity alone. The animals did not receive this blessing. As God is one, and yet a trinity of persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, so man was called from the very beginning, in some dignified but mysterious way, to be one and yet three, the true and eternal nuptial blessing. For an examination of the nuptial implications of man being created in the image of God, see the YouTube video entitled Created in the Image of God, Marriage in the Early Chapters of Genesis, Part 2. In the proposed outline of human descendants on the evolutionary timeline chart, that is, the earlier life forms from whom it is suggested humans are descended, a female was never formed from the side of a male. The female was always born from her mother's womb. Yet the first human female, Eve, as described in the book of Genesis, was not born from an earthly mother, but rather was formed from the side of her husband. This bedrock teaching of the Christian churches, that is, the unity of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve, makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to harmonize the creation of Adam and Eve with the theory of evolution. In the first case, that is, with the theory of evolution, each female is born from the womb of her mother. In the second case, that is the Bible, Eve is formed from the side of Adam. For those who believe in both, that is, in both the theory of evolution and the literal creation of Eve from Adam, it might be argued that God interrupted the course of nature when creating the first man, Adam, so that Eve was formed from his side and was therefore not born from an earthly mother. For those who believe in the theory of evolution and who wish to remain faithful to the biblical account of the creation of Adam and Eve, it will be suggested that the manner in which the first human being was created was unique. It was, it will be proposed, unknown to the world before and was not known ever since. Because God was doing something exceptional, that is, the creation of the groom and bride as one body in the Garden of Eden, the course of nature had to be interrupted at one pivotal time so as to bring into being his masterpiece. But what if there were other blessed couples described in the book of Genesis who were formed in the same special way as that of Adam and Eve, whereby the bride was formed from the side of her husband? Could this have been possible, and if so, how could such a further development of God's special gift to humanity be fitted with the theory of evolution? The course of nature would have to be interrupted not only once, but over and over again, as God continued to bless the world with the nuptial blessing he had predestined for all the chosen couples he had in mind, a blessing which distinguishes humanity from the rest of God's creation. In the 6-part video series on YouTube entitled Marriage in the Early Chapters of Genesis, it is proposed that the special manner in which Eve was formed from the side of Adam continued on, albeit in the fallen state of being subject to concupiscence and death, for a number of other blessed couples up to the time of Abraham and Sarah, at which time it ended. The 6 segments in the series are now shown on the screen. The series of talks are entitled: the first, Introduction; the second, Created in the Image and Likeness of God; the third, Cain and his wife; the fourth, the important account of Lamech and his family in Genesis chapter 4; the fifth, the genealogy of Genesis in Genesis chapter 5; and 6, Noah and the 4 marriages saved on the ark. For a detailed examination of the evidence for what might be termed this nuptial state in the beginning of creation, please see the 6-part series on YouTube entitled Marriage in the Early Chapters of Genesis, or visit our website paraclete.ie. A summary overview of the entire series might best be proposed by looking at Michelangelo's painting in the Sistine Chapel. In Michelangelo's revered painting, Eve, see God's left hand, is already in the mind of God before Adam was created. For every male, God has predestined a unique female, and for every female, a male.